You'd be hard-pressed to find someone on planet Earth who hasn't heard about Disney in some way. From the desolate plains of Africa to the frigid polar north, tales of the smiling Mickey Mouse and his creator, Walt Disney, have traveled far and wide over nearly 100 years. But of all the things Walt accomplished, one of his most prized creations above all was Disneyland. To Walt, Disneyland wasn't an escape from reality, it was a correction to it, and attention to detail was everything. In those early days, the park even employed live mermaid performers, young women stationed in the lagoon as sunbathing sirens during peak summer hours, though most guests today have no idea they ever existed or why they abruptly disappeared. You see, Walt wanted a park that didn't just simulate a world, but functioned as one. A place where everything served a purpose beyond stage dressing. Real fruit trees, not plastic decor, whose lemons, oranges, and figs were harvested at dawn to be used in the park's kitchens hours later. And gradually, obsessively, his attention turned not just to ecosystem design, but to ecosystem innovation. That was when the first closed-door, biological proposals began showing up in the Imagineering labs. Living creatures, not animatronics, that were custom-made for specific attractions. "Here it is, sir, just as you imagined," the lead bioimagineer said, gesturing toward the massive cylindrical aquarium dominating the center of the lab. Lit from underneath, the water shimmered gold and green as the creature drifted into view, alive, turning slowly with predatory grace. Walt stepped forward, hat in hand, face glowing with wonder. "Oh, boys, it's just magnificent," he said, voice truly giddy like a kid at heart. "The folks at home are going to love seeing this on my Wonderful World of Color show. Finally, an attraction that is truly real and will eventually find its way into the kitchen. It'll be a real hoot, and it'll be a perfect addition to the fine dining at the park." "Yes, sir," the scientist said, standing a little taller now. "We were able to genetically modify the scales of the fish to grow oyster shells, and once they adapted, the shells propagated rapidly. They respond to the current just like they would on natural stone. The organism believes this is home." Walt stepped right up to the curve of the aquarium glass, closer than any safety protocol would have allowed, and gave it 2 light taps with his knuckle. "Tell me," he said casually, never taking his eyes off the creature, "will the oysters produce pearls as well? Imagine that, dinner and a souvenir for the gift shop." The creature turned, not startled, but aware. It drifted up towards Walt, unblinking, then, in a sudden flash of movement, snapped sideways and vanished into deeper water. Walt lit up. "Why, it's as if it's not even afraid of us. That'll be perfect. You know we're looking to add these to the submarine voyage ride in June. Imagine it. Mermaid performers above, real fish below. The audience won't know where the fantasy ends." "That's a great idea, sir," the bioimagineer blurted, popping up onto his toes before catching himself and returning awkwardly to flat footing. That's when Walt noticed the mechanism affixed against the back wall of the tank. A slow rotating cylindrical brush, activated with a gentle hum like some sort of bushy spine. "Now, what on earth is that contraption?" Walt asked, eyebrow raised. An algae deterrent," he replied. "If left unchecked, the oysters will absorb an algae bloom and the meat takes on a bitter taste. The brush simulates grazing pressure, keeps the shells clean, encourages constant growth. It works beautifully, sir." Walt smiled, but his eyes flicked back to the tank. The fish pressed its full weight against the spinning brush, dragging its body along the bristles with unsettling force. The nylon fibers, meant to gently scrape algae, were instead being shaved away in tiny curls, drifting like shedding feathers to the bottom of the tank. Walt chuckled, but there was a nervous edge to it. "Well, he sure seems to like that thing. And what fish did you say this was? It sort of reminds me of the largemouth bass we had back in Missouri when I was a boy." Striped bass, sir," he replied. "Introduced to California waters back in the late 1800s. It grows to astounding sizes, and supposedly it's quite the gourmet food option." "Ah, our chefs will serve plates of sea bass with oysters on the side," Walt smiled. "Sounds quite gourmet, doesn't it?" Yes, sir. A gourmet bass by the sound of it," the Bioimagineer replied. "Ha! A gourmet bass. I like the sound of that." The opening day was a flawless Southern California afternoon. The press was packed shoulder to shoulder behind a velvet rope. Families fanned themselves with park maps. The first gleaming silver submarine, polished like a bullet, rested half submerged at the turquoise lagoon, with passengers already seated inside with eyes wide through the porthole windows. Walt stood at the edge of the newly christened dock, immaculate suit, white carnation, and a grin as wide as the American century. Beside him, under a draped linen cloth, stood a cylinder on a pedestal. The surprise no one yet expected. "Ladies and gentlemen," Walt began, his voice amplified warm and fatherly through the speakers above the lagoon. "Welcome to the future of undersea exploration, the submarine voyage." There was applause, camera flashes, children gasped as live mermaids, beautiful women with shimmering tails, waved from the sun-baked lagoon rocks nearby. Two more dove beneath the surface, their silhouettes visible through the submarine's underwater portholes. Walt stepped to the oversized brass operator switch, and with a theatrical flourish, he threw it. The submarine jolted, the crowd cheered, decorative propellers churned into motion as the craft glided forward into the lagoon, slipping beneath the mermaid's waving arms. The illusion was perfect. Real water, real women, real submersion. Walt watched it go, then turned back to the crowd, lifting the microphone once more. "Well, ever since I was a young boy in Marceline, Missouri, I wanted to bring happiness to the people. This began with our cartoons, then our films, and now, with attractions like this, we are building not fantasy, but a model of tomorrow, a working utopia, where beauty serves purpose and purpose sustains life." He turned slightly, hand poised over the draped cylinder. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great privilege to introduce the first living building block of the future, a breakthrough in nutritional self-sustainability." The crowd quieted in suspense. "We call it," Walt pulled the linen away, revealing a cylindrical aquarium, "the Gourmet Bass." Gasps rippled through the crowd, followed by a swell of delighted applause. Camera flashes strobed across the lagoon. Children stood on tiptoe. Even the press, trained never to look impressed, lifted their cameras higher for a better shot. A marching band began to play from the bandstand, triumphant, patriotic, utterly sincere. Walt beamed like he had just revealed fire to mankind. "Now let's release them into the tank," he shouted over the cheers. A red warning light above a reinforced steel gate at the back edge of the lagoon began to pulse as the machinery whirred to life beneath the waterline. The crowd leaned forward as the giant metal panel began to rise, and then they emerged. A school of gourmet bass, gliding in unnervingly with perfect formation, far more synchronized than any ordinary fish, each measuring 3 to 4 feet long as they poured into the submarine voyage tank like living ribbons of silver. The crowd erupted with astonishment. Passengers inside the submarine pressed their faces to the glass. Time seemed to slow. The marching band played on in bright, oblivious brass, the melody swelling, utterly unaware. Beneath the surface, the mermaids began their synchronized rotation, spinning in practiced elegance, their bodies arcing and ribboning through sunlight like living sculptures. Spinning. And the gourmet bass saw it. The instant the school completed its slow orbit, their formation tightened, instinct sharpening, purpose igniting. They swam directly towards the mermaids. At first, the impacts looked almost playful, then it wasn't. The women jolted violently mid-spin, instinct shattering through performance grace, arms darting upwards, fingers clawing towards sunlight as their tails thrashed in sudden, frantic defiance. Their screams never reached the surface, only a spray of silver bubbles, exploding from their mouths as the water began to churn red. The crowd, still cheering, began to falter. One scream, one single piercing scream, cut clean through the music, and Walt turned back towards the lagoon. And there it was, a crimson bloom unfurling beneath the surface, spreading until the entire tank was red. The gourmet bass released into the lagoon that afternoon never made it into the press reports. Within minutes of the attack, the emergency grid buried beneath the water was activated, a last resort electrical failsafe, broken only by the insulation of the submarine craft and the aquarium walls. The water snapped with a silent flash, and every gourmet bass in the attraction seized at once. Security swept the perimeter as cast members directed the crowd towards hidden Disney offices. The mermaids were retrieved from the water and encased in post-mortem body bags, and by nightfall, every member of the crowd, engineer, and performer who'd witnessed the incident had already signed the first round of non-disclosure agreements. Disney lawyers arrived before dinner, and statements were drafted before midnight. And somehow, unthinkably, the show reopened the following summer. New mermaid performers were cast. They smiled, they waved, they floated elegantly above the water as if no woman had ever drowned or been shredded there before. But the employees remembered the impacts, the arms reaching, the stream of bubbles from the muffled subsurface screams, and the cloud of red. Only one thing was missing when inventory from that day was counted. But as security records kept deep in the Disney Memory Bank's report, the lead bioimagineer signed his NDA at 12:17 a.m. He drove out of Anaheim by 12:42, and just before sunrise, he was in his hometown of Stockton, California. As the sun rose upon a new morning, at a public boat ramp on the San Joaquin River, he looked into the eyes of his misunderstood creation and released it. Now, folks around there don't tell ghost stories or monster tales. They don't even bother. They just warn you, never swim alone in the Delta. Because every so often, someone comes out of that river with long razor scrapes down their sides, blood in the water, saying something hard and alive slammed against them out of nowhere. Some say it was driftwood, others say they imagined it. But I know better. Because that fish Walt showed to the crowd that day, the one he called the Gourmet Bass, that one was never destroyed. And I, for one, believe it still swims in that river.